Do you think you know everything there is to know about legal research? Think again. Hi, and welcome to the Law Simplified. I'm Shaveen Bandardanayake. Ask any law student and they'll tell you that if they were to sum up their entire academic as well as professional careers into one word, it would be research. Oftentimes, however, when I encounter students who later get ingratiated into my fast track or masterclass programs, it's clear that, be it in their institutions or their universities, there's a lack of training provided on how exactly to properly research, be it cases or articles, but more importantly, how to analytically think about what they have discovered and then use it in terms of their academics or their professional careers. This video is meant to give you an overview by utilizing a few examples and one particular online legal database on how exactly you can supercharge your research and how you can distill and gather not just the relevant information, but form your own opinion based on that information, indicating to an examiner that you have gone above and beyond in terms of your research, and later on in your career, be the difference between winning a case and losing one. Let's have a look. Generally, when we go through these online libraries, we try to achieve two purposes. Okay, one is to get an overall indication of, or a quick summary, for example, of what certain cases are about. That's on the one side. And on the other side, it's to help us do research for assignments as well as these essay type questions that might have specific things they are asking. So the first thing I'll show you are the little tools, tips, and tricks when it comes to searching and also gathering information for cases. So what we do is first we go to cases and case search on the top left. And you'll notice generally when we search for cases, if you know what the case is, you can directly go to that, no problem. But there are certain other tools that might be helpful in finding certain types of cases that you might need to research on. Now, this might be useful today, or it might be useful later on when you do other subjects as well. So let's first go through a direct case search, and then I'll show you how to look at the abstract, how to look at specifics, and more importantly, how to find out how important that case is and all related or relevant cases. Okay. Donahue and Stevenson. Okay. So you are familiar with like the way these search engines work, right? So generally they'll give you whatever results that are relevant to it. Donahue and Stevenson particularly is the AC562 case. So this particular case, number 2, right? Now I'll tell you two things though. First thing is whenever you see a result like this, you'll notice on the bottom, it'll, in Westlaw in particular, it'll show you 3 PDFs or one or couple of PDFs and case analysis, as well as a summary. Most of the time, it's not just this case, in any case, we don't, if you quickly want to figure out what the case is about, you don't even have to go into the case because it's overwhelming, right? Every time to go into cases and figure things out. So sometimes this search result alone, just this block of information, is more than enough for you to determine whether you need this case or not. Now, Westlaw does this really important thing where you see it says positive or neutral judicial consideration and that it's a significant case. What that means is, at least what this means, is that this particular case has been cited and used by a lot of cases. Why that is important is, imagine you have an essay question that says, the principles of Donahue and Stevenson are now non-relevant. Discuss. just by going and searching for Donahue and Stevenson and finding this in the search box, you can disagree with that statement. Why? Because it's still positive or neutral judicial consideration, which means it's still applicable. And because it's significant, that means a lot of cases are still using it. So what I'm trying to get at is there's research means not just what you're told, but what you can gather by looking at other things from your searches. So let's go into this result. So normally in Westlaw, the moment you open it up, two things you will gather. One is you will see if it's a famous case, you will see this case digest. For the most part, 9 out of 10 times, this is all that you will need in order to determine whether this is relevant to whatever essay that you're talking about or whatever problem that you're trying to solve. This is all that's needed, from the summary to the abstract and then finally the decision. This is called the case digest, right? You can download this if you want. You can, refer to it. It doesn't matter. If you want to get the full case, you would go to law reports on the left here. When you go to law reports, the actual case they will show. Okay, so the full case, this is like, I believe Donahue and Stevenson is about 40 pages, if I'm no more than that, about 140 pages. So you'll notice it's a really long case, right? Now, let's say let's say there was a problem, there was an essay question where they have taken an extract from Donahue and Stevenson. You know how sometimes they make essays like that? They'll take part of the judgment, right? They'll take part of the judgment and then say Donahue and Stevenson and discuss. Now, it's important first, if you get a situation like that, to actually go to that particular statement in the judgment to see why the judge said that and whatever the surrounding information is. And obviously, if you have this entire 140 odd pages, you're not going to be reading the whole thing to get to that point, right? So what you should do, and this is like a technical trick essentially. So what you would do is you would hit the Command F key for find. And you'll see a little box that comes on the top right. And you type what that extract said, or what's the word that you're actually searching for. So let's say, for example, I'm searching for the word snail. So it says 18 results and it'll highlight all those words. So this is a very quick way to do research without wasting too much time. Get the extract directly from the judgment. But remember, if you just want to know about the case, what was decided without having to go through all of these specifics, all you need is the case analysis. You look at the case analysis to determine the brief facts of the case, what was held and why it was held, and what judges gave that decision. At this point, we are sort of at the very basics, right, of searching for a case and then finding out, okay, what's important, what's not, how do you search for specific things. Now we are going to go and look at a few like advanced aspects. Now, along to show an examiner or to show your assessor like the fact that you are not just looking at cases, but you are also trying to see whether it's relevant or not. One thing you would want to do is to see not just what this case is about and why it was decided, but how relevant and important it is in relation to other cases over time and based on the different court systems. So this is very difficult, right? Like, I mean, yes, you would have this case, but it's very hard to see, like when you take a law report, right? When you take the actual judgment, you will see cases that they have cited which were decided before this date, right? So this, for example, Donahue and Stevenson was decided in 1932. So when they made this decision, the judges would have used certain cases to apply. But obviously, all of these cases are things which are decided before 1932, right? So we need to know after 1932 and after this case, what are the cases that have come after that that have used this decision, either applied it, either considered it, sometimes distinguished it, which means they have not taken it into consideration, or they have overruled it in some instance. It's important to see how important this case was over time. The way we do that is, you'll notice this particular, in any case result. So in this case, this is a case result for Donahue and Stevenson. On the left, it says under case analytics, at the bottom of the left pane, let me get to that. Over here, it says treatment and precedent map. Yeah. So what these two are is to show you how this case has been used after it was decided. So we will first look at precedent map. So precedent map is a visual representation of how this case has impacted other cases after its decision. Okay. So here you'll notice, if I say show full map, in different courts, especially the appellate courts, these are the cases that either it has been cited, mentioned, or applied. So you'll notice here, over time, all of the links to different cases and how the different courts have decided on it. Now, mind you, Donahue and Stevenson is a seminal case, right? It's not just a case that impacts UK jurisdiction, but it impacts other parts of the world as well. So that's why you see hundreds, if not thousands, of cases. So don't get overwhelmed by this. I'm just giving you as an example, right? What this is most useful for is a more, let's say, not a very famous case, but a case that does have some authority. So since you mentioned the tort law case, another relatively important but not as famous case I would think is Nettleship and Weston. So about the trainee driver, how they should be considered as the same as any other competent driver. Relatively famous case, but not as famous as Donahue and Stevenson. We could use this system for that. Now you can use filters to hone this a bit more. Like, for example, in terms of jurisdiction, you can see which countries have used it according to their records. In terms of subject matter, obviously this is only tort law, so you see mostly tort or negligence cases. You can look at the courts that have cited it, from an appellate court level to the high court or the lower courts. This is one way to go about it. And when you scroll down, you will see, let me close this, you will see all of the citations. Essentially, what are the cases that have used Donahue and Stevenson? Not just used, but in what way they have used it. So here, for example, in 2018, a case called GR and Greater Glasgow and Clyde Health Board had applied Donahue and Stevenson. What that means is they have relied on Donahue and Stevenson for their decision. Versus in 2016, Hovmet Limited and Economic Devices have considered Donahue and Stevenson, which means they have looked into it. They have not used it for the decision, but they have justified their decision by showing Donahue and Stevenson as an example. So as you go down, there might be situations where it's not applied or considered, but it's more followed, which means very similar to applied as well. Sometimes they have distinguished. Here we might not find one like that because Donahue is still good law. Let me search for that. Yeah, see, distinguished. What this means is that in this case, Tate and Lyle Industries Limited and Greater London Council, they looked at Donahue but said the situation is different to Donahue and didn't use it. So this is what we call the precedent map. This is to show how this case has been used over time. Another way to go through this, and this we were on the precedent map aspect, is the treatment. So treatment means in what subject area is this case most relevant and most important. So here, as you know, Donahue and Stevenson is a decision made on the establishment of duty of care. So because we know that already, duty of care is the prominent topic that this is on. But then you'll also see peculiarly, it's also a topic on beverages because it's on that ginger beer. Okay, then you can also filter the treatment of this case by type, which means, and I would argue this is the more important one, this shows how many cases have applied this, how many cases have distinguished it. So from the total number of cases that have used Donahue and Stevenson, which ones have thought it's a good decision and it should be used? Which ones have thought, no, it's not relevant to us? Now, this is very important when it comes to research, because imagine you get an assignment or you get to you need to talk about an essay on duty of care, for examples, or the relevance of Donahue and Stevenson. This is how you would go about it. If they were to ask you on relevance, for example, whether this case is anyway relevant in the 21st century, because it's close to 100 years since the case was decided, right? We are now in 2022. This is the 90th year since Donahue and Stevenson was decided. You can still say, based on your research, that it has a positive or neutral citation, which means it's still good law. And a majority of the cases that cite it, right? There are 695 citations for this case in modern law. From those, only 13 have said it's not relevant. Do you get the picture?
Yeah.
That's how you refer to it. Like you distinctly refer to it based on the research conducted on Westlaw and the treatment of Donahue and Stevenson. Of the 695 cases that have cited this seminal dicta, only 13 have distinguished it, suggesting that Donahue and Stevenson overwhelmingly is still relied on and relevant in establishing duty of care. Right. This video was meant to give you an overarching view, not just on the basics or the fundamentals of legal research, particularly in terms of going through an online database, identifying relevant case law, and then applying the generic as well as the specific methods of research to determine how it's important and, more importantly, when it's necessary to be used in a particular context. Now, mind you, this is not the only set of tools that may be available to you. I have used this predominantly because I'm familiar, or rather I'm more comfortable with this particular online database, and from experience over the past 8 years of teaching, I've understood it to be the most robust and with the shortest learning curve, so to speak, in terms of a new student. That being said, until the next time that we meet, have fun, stay safe, and as always, obey the law.